I work in a haunted mansion. Literally. I hear footsteps, lights flicker, and the fireplaces randomly come on. I'm a behavioral health technician, and I got a new job back in September at what's considered a luxury drug and alcohol rehab facility. The facility is a huge mansion that on the outside looks like a mix between the Banks Bel Air mansion from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and a mini White House. It has 3 levels and 13 rooms, each with a private bathroom and jacuzzi tub. There's a gym, 3 living rooms, a huge commercial kitchen, a ballroom yoga studio, a doctor's office, a huge garden, and an elevator. During my first week, I had 2 clients tell me it's haunted, and I laughed it off. My schedule is 11 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., so most of the time all the clients are asleep, and it's just me and a nurse in this huge house, so it's quiet. My office is on the 2nd floor, while the nurse's office and the kitchen with a huge pantry are on the 1st floor. The pantry is locked at all times, and the nurse has the key. A couple of weeks ago, the nurse came stomping up the stairs yelling at me, saying I scared her by hiding in the pantry. I was confused because I hadn't left my office, and when I told her that, she went pale. She said, "You weren't just in the pantry and yelled knock knock." I said, "No, how could I be when you have the key?" She walked out. 10 minutes later, I heard her talking, so I went down to her office, and she was on her knees, praying in Punjabi. At 6 a.m., the chef and handyman clocked in and asked how our night was. I jokingly said, "Casper scared Nurse J in the pantry." The chef said, "Ooh, that's K if it was in the pantry." I was like, what the heck? He then explained that he's worked here for 15 years, and it used to be a retirement home, so lots of residents passed away here. He named certain residents and where their ghosts have been seen, saying they've always been kind, not malicious hauntings. Nurse J put in her 2-week notice and is no longer here. I hear footsteps, lights flicker, and the fireplaces randomly come on, but I haven't had anything actually speak to me like Nurse J did. My pay is significantly higher than average, and my supervisor says it's because he can't keep the night shift staffed. I think it's because it's haunted, and my pay is too good to scare me away. My horrifying experience as a paramedic. As we approached the Camaro, my partner says, "Back, back, back, back. Now, now, now." I'm a retired paramedic. We had a call on a very desolate stretch of road about a car sitting in the middle of the road, covered in blood. Of course, it had to happen at 2 a.m., just like every horror story. We arrived on the scene and found a new Camaro sitting in the middle of the road that had obviously been in an accident. The problem is, there was absolutely nothing else around the car. No people, no other vehicles, nothing. Part of my job then was as a tactical paramedic for our sheriff's department. Sounds all exciting and high-speed, low-drag, but nope, not as a medic. I got paid to wait for stuff to happen and sit in the rear with the gear. That being said, my paramedic partner and I both had pistols in the ambulance. As we started approaching the Camaro, my partner was shining a light around when he said in a low, hushed and rushed voice, "Back, back, 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 now, now, now." He said, I shined my light in the car, and there are insides wrapped around the gear shifter and a lung in the back seat. So, we freaked out a bit, called dispatch to let them know what was happening, and were in the process of getting out of there until the cops showed up when we saw a figure appear walking down the road toward us. As he got closer, we saw he was covered in blood and gore. We both threw on our tactical vests and helmets, grabbed our pistols, and I sounded like a frightened Home Alone 9-year-old on the radio to dispatch. We approached and started screaming at him to get on the ground, which he did. After everyone's heart rate was below 200 BPM, we started talking and figured out what happened. This guy had purchased a brand new Camaro and drove it to this desolate stretch of road to open it up. He said 1 minute he was shifting gears, and the next thing he knew, his car was all over the road, his mouth was full of blood, and it seemed like an explosion had gone off. I started looking over his injuries and couldn't really see anything major, so I asked him about the passenger in his car. He said, "What passenger?" My partner said, "There's a lung in your back seat." The guy went straight into mental overload and couldn't come up with anything, so I thought he was hurt. We got him in the ambulance. The police were 5 minutes away. We potentially had another victim out there, so I had to go look by myself. I walked through the crash scene, looked in the car, and sure enough, intestines were wrapped around the gear shifter. A lung was in the back seat, and there looked like parts of a liver. It looked like a hand grenade had gone off inside the car. I walked around the other side of the car and saw a faint blood smear stain on the road. I walked to it, saw something else further down the road, and kept walking toward it. I finally saw something on the side of the road and ran up to it. Honestly, completely freaked out and scared to death about the body I was about to see, and the dude had hit a deer. What happened is, when he was winding the car out, state police estimated him well over 100 mph. A deer jumped into his car's path and hit the top corner of the windshield with its stomach. When the windshield crashed, it created a negative vacuum in the car, sucking almost all of the deer's organs out and into his car and all over him. I had the fire department decontaminate him, wrapped him in some blankets, and took him to the hospital. For many, many years after, my wonderful 911 dispatchers happily played the recording for anyone who wished to hear it. I was hiding from your mom. My mom is dead. One of the creepiest stories I know personally is from my best friend, who was at home babysitting a friend's kid. The kid, whose name was Junior, was roughly 4 or 5 years old, I want to say. His dad was a courier, so he would often be doing deliveries late at night. David, my best friend, was a teen at this point, so being home without an adult was no great task. It's important to mention that Junior's father was a pretty paranoid individual who bought into a lot of fear-mongering in the world, so he had cameras set up all over the place. I want to say this happened in 2014. Anyway, David was busy in his bedroom minding his own business when he decided to head into his den, where all the cameras happened to be set up. But the den was locked. David knocked on the door to the den, and Junior opened it up. "Why did you lock the door?" David asked. "Because of the lady," Junior said. "What lady?" David asked. "Your mom. I saw her in the kitchen." The house's living room was directly connected to the kitchen, and if you were standing in the kitchen entryway, you could see the door leading outside. It was one of those screened-in sitting areas. Junior claimed that David's mother was right there in the doorway. This was really strange, especially considering David's mother had passed away just about 8 months prior. David was chilled by the remark, but the skeptic in him knew it was likely just Junior's overly active imagination, so he agreed to go and check with him. He brought a kitchen knife, if I'm remembering the story correctly. He walked with Junior down the hallway into the kitchen where the door was open. The door being open was pretty normal. It was a hot summer day, and the house trapped a lot of heat. David stepped out onto the screened sitting area and looked left down the ramp his mother used to use to get outside. Nothing. He looked to the right, seeing the length of the yard. Nothing. Junior was insistent that there was someone there, which is strange, considering usually in situations like these, kids tend to feel better after you poke around for them. David couldn't calm him down. Junior was certain. He kept saying, "I saw your mom, she was here." So David bargained with him. "Everything's recorded on the cameras, so we'll just look on them and we'll know for certain whether someone was there or not." They sifted through the cameras, and David looked for a timestamp around when Junior claimed that his deceased mother had shown up. He stared down at all the cameras as the timer ticked on, and nothing showed up. But suddenly, he watched as the camera showed a figure enter his backyard from the front by pulling the latch. An old woman, at least in her mid-60s, confidently walked into their backyard. She had a cloth grocery bag in her hand. She headed up the ramp and stood in their screened sitting area for a few moments. She then reached for the door to the kitchen, cracked it open, and brazenly stepped inside. After some time, Junior saw her in the kitchen and went to tell David. Based on the camera's timestamps, she stood in the kitchen for at least 10 minutes. The absolutely insane part is that she left as David went to investigate with Junior. The camera footage showed him looking around and her leaving as he looked around. When he looked left down at the ramp where she'd come up, she had already wrapped around and actually took the long way around through the length of the yard. When he looked right, he quite literally just missed her. It was genuinely a matter of maybe a half second. Someone wandered right into his backyard and right into his kitchen, then stood there for 10 minutes in his kitchen doing God knows what. Nothing was stolen, and nobody was harmed or anything. Well, anyway, the night went on, and nothing came of it. Personally, I would have phoned the police, but David wouldn't. I think there's a chance that his dad may have had some guns that were acquired through perhaps some non-reputable methods. They were locked away from everyone, whatever small comfort that is, haha. So David's instinct was that his dad would likely be furious about the police being called. Anyway, some time passed. Days, weeks, who knows. I'm not even sure how this information came about, but somehow David was told by either a family member or a staff member that the old woman who wandered into the house had dementia and had an episode, just sort of finding herself there by a string of coincidences.